The lost alien princess trusted one human more than anyone else. The wreck was still burning when we found her. I know, things do not burn in the vacuum of space, but that is what it looked like. The hull of the ElseHFY courier ship was glowing orange along every seam, the metal warped outward the way metal looks after something very hot, and very sudden tears through it from the inside. Our scanner was making sounds I had never heard before, not warning sounds. More like confused sounds, like the machine itself did not know how to describe what it was looking at. I was the one reading the scanner. That was my job on the enduring Kel. Not because I was the most qualified. I was the least qualified person on a crew of 12. I was the only human. But I was also the only one who could sit in the forward cabin for 6 hours without complaining, which the Vorath navigator, Silu, called an impressive biological defect. I took it as a compliment. Hull integrity is at 4%, I said into the crew channel. Life sign readings are... Actually, wait. Commander Valeth's voice came back immediately. He had the kind of voice that never changed volume, never changed tone. Flat and precise, like a machine reading a statement aloud. Mercer, report. There is one life sign, I said. Faint, but there. The silence on the channel lasted exactly 3 seconds. I counted. Then Valeth said, "Is it ElseHFY? The biosignature is not human, if that is what you are asking." Another pause. Board it. He did not say be careful. He never did. The docking took 11 minutes. The enduring Kel's boarding tube locked onto the only section of the courier ship that still had structural shape, the rear cargo bay. I went in with Dorn, our cargo specialist, a large, four-armed being from a species called the Greth, who communicated mostly through posture. Right now his posture said he wanted to be anywhere else. I understood the feeling. The inside of the courier ship was dark and wrong. The air recyclers were dead, so we were on suit oxygen. Every light fixture had been blasted inward. The floors had a strange wet sheen that I chose not to look at too closely. Cargo containers had been torn open, their contents scattered. Whatever had attacked this ship had not been looking for cargo. We found her in the second corridor. She was sitting with her back against the wall, her knees pulled up to her chest, her eyes open. She was wearing what had probably once been a formal garment, layered fabric in pale silver and green, but it was torn at the shoulder and darkened with ash. Her skin was the color of deep ocean water, which is how ElseHFY skin looks, with faint bioluminescent patterns along the neck and collarbones that glow very dimly when the ElseHFY are calm and very brightly when they are afraid. Hers were almost blinding. She looked at me first, not at Dorn. Not at the corridor, at me. Her eyes were large and dark, the way ElseHFY eyes always are, built for low-light environments. She looked at me the way a person looks at something they cannot categorize, not with fear exactly, but with the careful attention of someone making a very fast decision. I held up both my hands, palms forward. The universal signal. I am not holding anything. I am not going to do anything sudden. I did it slowly, making sure she could see clearly. "We are not going to hurt you," I said. I said it in Galactic Standard, which is the trade language every species in the Coalition uses, and every species speaks badly, including humans. "My name is Jax. We are a salvage crew. We picked up your life sign." She said nothing. "Are you hurt?" Still nothing, but her eyes tracked down to my hands, then back up to my face. She was measuring something. "Okay," I said. "That is fine. You do not have to say anything. I just need to know if you are physically injured, so I can help you." She spoke then. Her Galactic Standard was fragmented and careful, like someone who had learned the words from a recording rather than from conversation. "The others," she said. "Where are the others?" I had already checked. The scanner had been clear. One life sign. Only one. I did not look away from her face when I answered, because I had learned a long time ago that people can tell when you are about to say something hard by whether or not you look at them. There are no others, I said. Her bioluminescent patterns flared white for just a moment. Then she closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they were steady. Whatever grief that was, she was holding it somewhere deep and private, in a place I was not allowed to see. "Can you walk?" I asked. She nodded once. "Then come with me, please." She stood. She was taller than I expected. Most ElseHFY are, built long and slim. She swayed slightly when she got upright, and I moved forward without thinking, putting my arm out for her to steady herself. She did not take it. But she looked at the arm, and then at me, and something in her expression shifted, a fraction, barely visible. She walked. Dorn reported to Valeth ahead of us on the comm. I heard Valeth's response before we even got back to the boarding tube. "ElseHFY, Royal Cast, get a bioscan immediately. Do not let her touch anything." I did not say anything to that. I just held the tube hatch open and let her go through first. She was taken to the medbay. That word, taken, is accurate. 2 crew members, Silu and a Greth named Orith, guided her with very little conversation and a lot of pointed directions. She went without resisting. I watched from the doorway as the ship's diagnostic system began its scan. She sat on the examination platform and looked at her hands. Valeth came to stand beside me in the doorway. He was Voreth, which means he was about 2 meters tall, gray-skinned, with 4 eyes arranged in a flat band across his face, the outer 2 for peripheral vision, the inner 2 for focus. He was focused on her right now. "ElseHFY Royal Cast," he said, quietly enough that only I could hear. The bioscan confirmed the genetic markers. She is the 3rd daughter of Matriarch Corinvel. I had not expected that. "A princess," I said. "Do not use that word around her. ElseHFY royalty find it diminishing." "What word should I use?" "None," Valeth said. "We are contacting the Coalition Coordination Hub. They will instruct us on the appropriate protocol for this situation." He paused. "No one interacts with her outside of medical necessity until we receive those instructions." "She has been alone in a burned ship, surrounded by people who are dead," I said. "She has had nothing to eat. She is probably in shock." Valeth looked at me, all 4 eyes. "Mercer," he said, "do you understand what I am telling you?" "Yes," I said. I understood exactly what he was telling me. I went to the galley and got a protein packet and a water container and walked back to the med bay and knocked on the open door frame. She looked up. I held out the protein packet. "It does not taste good," I said. "But nothing on this ship does." She looked at the packet. She looked at me. She reached out and took it. I pulled over a small equipment stool and sat down just inside the door, far enough away to be unthreatening, close enough to be present. She opened the packet carefully, examined the contents with the focus of someone who had been trained to notice things, and then ate, slowly, methodically. "They are discussing what to do with me," she said. "They are discussing a lot of things," I said. "That is one of them." She looked at me sideways. "You are not discussing it." "No," I said. "Why?" I thought about it for a second. "Because someone should probably just sit with you right now. The other stuff can wait." She was quiet for a long moment. The bioluminescent patterns on her neck were still dimly lit, but they had changed color. Less white, something closer to pale green, which I would later learn was what ElseHFY bioluminescence looks like when a person feels something they do not have a word for. "What is your name?" she asked. "Jax Mercer," I said. "Corporal, formerly. Now just crew. You were a soldier. A medic. There is a difference." She considered this. "What is the difference?" "Soldiers are trained to cause injuries," I said. "Medics are trained to fix them. We go to the same places. We see the same things. But the job is the opposite." She looked at me for a long moment with those dark, careful eyes. Then she said, "My name is ElseHFY." She did not offer anything else. She did not need to. But she told me her name, and that, I would understand much later, was not a small thing for a ElseHFY royal to give to a stranger. I nodded. "ElseHFY," I said. "Are you cold? The medbay thermostat is always wrong on this ship." She blinked. "Yes," she said. "A little." I went and got her a thermal blanket. It was the orange kind, crinkly, and not very dignified. She wrapped it around her shoulders without any expression of complaint, and for just 1 second, under that ridiculous orange blanket, in that sterile and too bright medbay, she looked very young and very tired and very far from anything safe. I sat back down on the stool. Outside in the corridor, I could hear Valeth's footsteps. He would be coming to tell me I was disobeying a direct instruction. He would be right. I stayed anyway. The next morning, ship time morning, the enduring Kel cycled its lights on a 26-hour schedule. I went back to the medbay before my shift started. ElseHFY was awake. She had been awake for a long time, I could tell. Seravi do not need as much sleep as humans, and whatever sleep she had managed had clearly not been restful. She was sitting cross-legged on the examination platform with the thermal blanket over her shoulders, looking at the far wall like it owed her something. "I brought coffee," I said, holding up a container. "Do you know what coffee is?" "I have read about it," she said. "It is a human stimulant beverage made from roasted seeds." "That is technically accurate and makes it sound terrible," I said. "Here." She took the container, looked at it, and took a small, careful sip. Her expression did not change, but she took another sip, which I counted as a positive reaction. I pulled the stool over again. "Tell me something," she said. She was still looking at the far wall. "All right," I said. "The commander of this ship, what kind of person is he?" "Valeth?" I thought about it. "He is not cruel. He is careful. There is a difference. But he will follow orders." "Yes," I said. "And if the coalition tells him to hand me to someone who is not safe?" I looked at her. She was still looking at the wall. Her voice had been perfectly level when she said it. Not a plea, just a question, asked in the clear, practical way of someone who has been trained to think through problems without letting feeling cloud the analysis. "Has the Galactic Coalition given instructions yet?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "They are slow. Big bureaucracies always are." She nodded, once, as if confirming something she had already suspected. Then she said, "Jax." "Yes. There are people inside my government who wanted me dead." The ship was not attacked by outsiders. The route was known only to 3 members of the inner court. She finally looked at me. "I am telling you this because you should know what you are holding." I held her gaze. "I am not holding you," I said. "You can walk out of this room any time you want." She looked at me for a long moment. "And go where?" she said. Not bitterly, just honestly. "Fair point," I said. "But the offer stands." Something very small happened at the corners of her mouth. Not quite a smile, more like the memory of one. "Your galactic standard is better than most humans I have heard on broadcasts," she said. "I spent 2 years at a coalition aid station on the Vorath frontier," I said. "You pick things up fast when the alternative is not knowing what your patient is telling you." "You treated Vorath patients?" "And Greth, and 2 ElseHFY actually, docking accident survivors." She was quiet for a moment. "How did you treat them?" "Our biology is very different from yours." "Carefully," I said. "And I asked a lot of questions. And I listened to the answers, and I did not assume I already knew everything." I paused. "That is mostly how I treat everyone." She looked at the coffee container in her hands. "That is not as common as it sounds," she said. "No," I agreed. "It is not." Silu's voice came over the ship-wide comm, calling all crew to the main briefing room. I stood up. ElseHFY's expression did not change, but her bioluminescent patterns shifted, dimmer, more cautious. "I will come back," I said, "and I will tell you what they decide." "You should not make promises in situations you cannot control," she said. "Probably not," I admitted, "but I am going to anyway." I went to the briefing room. 12 crew members around a table, most of them looking at a holographic display showing a coalition communications crest. Valeth stood at the front, his 4 eyes doing the thing they do when he is choosing words very carefully. "The Coalition Coordination Hub has responded," he said. "They have asked us to maintain the current situation and wait for a designated diplomatic vessel, which will arrive in approximately 9 shipboard days. In the meantime, the passenger," he used the word deliberately, I noticed, "is to be kept comfortable, monitored for health, and not engaged in any political or informational discussion." Dorn shifted in his seat. Several other crew members exchanged looks that contained entire conversations. "Not engaged," said Orith, the senior Greth. "Does that mean we cannot speak to her?" "It means," Valeth said, "we speak to her only on practical matters." I raised my hand. Old habit from the military. "Who is on the diplomatic vessel? Coalition peacekeepers?" Valeth looked at me with 2 of his 4 eyes. "That information has not been provided. Then we do not know if the people coming to collect her are safe. Mercer. She told me this morning that the attack on her ship was not external," I said. "She believes someone inside her own government gave up the route. If that is true, and if whoever is coming has ties to that faction, that is not information we are in a position to verify," Valeth said, and his voice carried a warning in it, flat and clear. "It is information we should try to verify," I said. "That is not our assignment," Valeth said. "We found her, we report her, we hand her over. That is the limit of what we are." The room was quiet. I looked around at the crew. Dorn's posture was unreadable. Silu was looking at his console. Orath was watching me with small, careful eyes. "Understood," I said, and then I said nothing else. After the briefing, I walked back to the medbay. She looked up when I came in. "They are going to wait for a coalition vessel," I said. 9 days. She nodded slowly. "And you do not know who is on the vessel?" "No." She absorbed this. Then she said, "In Saravi court protocol, there is a term, Veth Suril. It means the waiting that is not safe. It is the period between when danger is known and when it arrives. Most people spend that time hoping they are wrong." She looked at me. "Are you going to spend the next 9 days hoping you are wrong?" "No," I said. "I am going to spend them paying attention." She was quiet. Then she said, "Do you know any games?" I blinked. "Games?" "I cannot sit in this room for 9 days without something to do," she said. "And the diagnostic console does not have any interesting programs." I thought for a moment, then went to my bunk and came back with a deck of physical playing cards, the paper kind, old-fashioned, which I kept because I liked the way they felt. I sat down across from her on the examination platform and spread them between us. "This game is called Rummy," I said. "I will teach you the rules." She learned the rules in 3 minutes. She won the first game in 4 minutes. She won the next 6 games in a row, each one faster than the last. I stared at the cards after the 7th loss. "You have either played this before," I said, "or you are doing something I cannot explain." "I have not played before," she said. "I am simply identifying the patterns." "In 3 minutes?" "I identified them in the first 90 seconds, she said. "The rest of the time, I was being polite." I looked at her. Then I laughed. Actually laughed. The real kind, not the polite kind. She looked startled. Then, very cautiously, she smiled. It was a small smile, just at the edges, but it was real, and it changed her whole face. "You are strange, Jax Mercer," she said. "People keep telling me that," I said. "I think," she said slowly, like she was deciding to say it as she said it, "that strange might be the right word for someone I can trust." I picked up the cards and started shuffling. "Another hand?" I said. "Yes," she said. And she sat forward, and her bioluminescent patterns glowed a steady, quiet green. The alarm sounded at a time the ship's clock called 0312, which is the deepest part of the ship's artificial night cycle, when most of the crew was in their bunks, and the corridors were lit only by the low blue safety lights that lined the floor. I was not asleep. I had not been sleeping well for the last 2 days, and not because the bunk was uncomfortable, which it was, but because I had been thinking about the coalition diplomatic vessel that was coming, and the fact that we still did not know who was on it. I had been running the numbers in my head, 9 days, 8 days, now 7, and the numbers felt wrong in a way I could not fully explain. When the proximity alarm sounded, I was already sitting up. The ship's alert system cycled through 3 tones: standard proximity, then the sharper double tone of an unregistered vessel, and then a tone I had never heard before in 18 months on the enduring Kel, a flat, sustained sound that the ship's manual described as hostile docking attempt in progress. I pulled on my boots and was in the corridor before the ship-wide comm even activated. Valeth's voice came through, controlled as always, but moving faster than usual. All crew to stations. Unregistered vessel, Seravi make, has locked a docking tube to our port airlock. No communication received. No identification signal. I did not go to a station. I went to the medbay. ElseHFY was already on her feet when I got there. She had slept in her clothes. She did every night, I had noticed, the way people sleep when they know they might need to move quickly. Her bioluminescent patterns were bright and sharp, the white-blue color of high alert. "It is them," she said. She said it without any hesitation, the way you say something you already knew before you heard the news. "How many would they send?" I asked. 3, she said. "Never more, never less. 3 is the number that the Council of Interior uses for removal operations." She said the last 2 words with a careful flatness. "They will have a kill order. They will present it as a custody transfer." I looked at the doorway. "I need to move you." "Where?" "Cargo bay. There is a maintenance crawl space behind the secondary coolant unit. Small, but enclosed. I can lock it from the outside with a code they will not have." She was already moving toward the door. "Show me." We went through the back corridor, the one that ran parallel to the main passage, but was mostly used for equipment access. I had learned that corridor in my first week on the enduring Kel because I had a habit of learning the layout of every enclosed space I spent more than a week in. Old medic training. Know your exits before you need them. The cargo bay was dark and cold. I found the maintenance space behind the coolant unit, a hatch about 1 meter square, behind a wall panel that looked like part of the structure. I had found it by accident 3 months ago when I was chasing a loose power coupling. I opened it. She looked in. "It is very small," she said. "Yes." She looked at me. "You are not coming in." "No," I said. "Someone needs to be out here." I handed her the ship's emergency comm unit, a small flat device, about the size of my palm. "This runs on a separate frequency from the ship's main comm. They cannot intercept it. If something goes wrong, you press this and tell me." She took it. Her fingers closed around it. Then she looked at me in the dark of the cargo bay, and her bioluminescent patterns were doing something I had not seen before. A slow, steady pulse, deep blue, like something from the bottom of a very deep ocean. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "This could get you removed from the crew." "It could get you charged." "Yes," I said. "That does not answer the question." "Because you are scared," I said. "And because sending 3 people with a kill order to collect someone who survived a massacre is not a custody transfer. It is finishing the job." She held the comm unit against her chest. "You are very certain for someone who does not have all the information." "I have enough," I said. She climbed into the space. I passed her the thermal blanket she had carried from the medbay. She settled in, pulling her knees up, and looked at me through the open hatch with those dark, wide eyes. "Jax," she said. "Yes. If they get past you." "They will not," I said, and I meant it. Not because I had a plan that guaranteed it, but because some things you say and then you make true by refusing to let them be false. I closed the hatch. I set the lock code. I walked to the cargo bay door and stood in the corridor outside it, leaning against the wall with my arms folded, and I waited. I did not have to wait long. The port airlock cycled 11 minutes after the proximity alarm. I heard the hiss of the pressure equalization, and then the clunk of a magnetic seal, and then footsteps, 3 sets, measured and deliberate, moving up the main corridor toward the med bay. I stayed where I was. I let them pass. I watched them through the corridor junction, 3 figures in dark pressure suits, ElseHFY built, with the visor plates darkened. They were moving with the confidence of people who expected the ship's crew to step aside. 2 of them were carrying equipment cases. The third was carrying nothing, which meant the third was the one who did the things the other 2 did not want to be documented doing. They reached the med bay. They went inside. 14 seconds later, they came back out. The third one stopped in the corridor and turned its head, scanning. I was around the junction, out of sight, but close enough that I could hear the suit's communication system, a low, clicking sound as it transmitted something. Then, all 3 of them started toward the cargo bay. I stepped into the corridor. They stopped. For a moment, nobody moved. I was standing in the blue safety light glow of the empty corridor, in my boots and my crew jacket and nothing else, blocking the path to the cargo bay door. 3 armored figures looked at me. I looked back at them. "This corridor is restricted," I said. "Crew access only." The third one, the one with no equipment case, spoke. Its galactic standard was formal and cold. "Stand aside. We are executing a coalition-sanctioned custody transfer." "I have not seen any documentation of that," I said. "You are not authorized to require documentation. I am crew on this vessel," I said. "Crew is authorized to require documentation for any non-crew member accessing the cargo area. Standard Coalition Shipping Law, Article 47. There was a pause. I could not see their faces through the darkened visors, but I could see the slight shift in posture that meant they were communicating with each other on a private channel. "You are a human," the third one said. "Yes," I said. "This does not involve you." "I am standing in a corridor," I said. "That makes it involve me." Another pause. Then the third figure stepped forward, closing half the distance between us. It was meant to be threatening. It was, a little. I did not move. "The passenger you are harboring," it said, and its voice dropped, lower and more direct, "is a matter of ElseHFY internal governance. You have no authority here. Stand aside." "I said this corridor is restricted," I said. "I am going to keep saying it." I said it in ElseHFY. I had learned that phrase 3 days ago, specifically for this moment. My pronunciation was terrible, but the meaning was clear. The figure went very still, and then the cargo bay lights came on, full bright, flooding the corridor through the open door behind me. And then the ship's main alarm sounded, not the proximity tone but the crew alert, which meant Valeth had finally made a decision. And then I heard footsteps from 3 different directions as the rest of the Enduring Kel's crew converged on the corridor. The 3 figures looked at the crew. They looked at me. I had not moved a centimeter. "Documentation," I said again, pleasantly. "Article 47. They did not produce documentation. What they produced, after a long and silent moment, was a retreat. Back down the corridor, back to the airlock, back to their ship, which disengaged from our hull and drifted away without another word and without a single answer to any of the questions Valeth shouted into the comm channel for the next 20 minutes. I went back to the cargo bay. I unlocked the maintenance hatch. ElseHFY climbed out, still holding the comm unit. She stood in the cargo bay and looked at me without speaking for a long moment. "You stayed," she said. Her voice was very quiet. "Yes," I said. "You were alone." "For a little while," I said. "The crew came. Because of you." I shook my head. "Because Valeth made a call." She looked at me carefully. "You are doing that thing where you give the credit to someone else. He did make the call. After you held that corridor alone," she said. "For how long?" "Long enough," I said. She looked down at the comm unit in her hands. You said they would not get past you. Yes, I said. How did you know? I thought about it for a second. I did not know, I said. But I said it, and then I went and stood in the way. That is usually how it works. She was quiet for a moment. The blue glow of her bioluminescent patterns had settled into something steady and slow, the deep green of the color she showed when she was feeling something she could not name. Jax, she said. Yes. I need to tell you some things. About who I am. About what I know. She met my eyes. But not tonight. All right, I said. Tomorrow, she said. And you should know, what I am going to tell you is going to make everything more complicated. More complicated than tonight, I said. For the second time since I had found her in that burning ship, she smiled. It was wider this time, and it stayed longer. Significantly, she said. I picked up the thermal blanket from the floor of the maintenance space and held it out to her. She took it. We walked back through the ship together, through the blue-lit corridors and the residual noise of a crew still buzzing from what had just happened, and I thought about what she had said. More complicated. I had handled complicated before. I had worked in places where complicated meant the difference between someone going home and someone not going home. Complicated was not something that made me stop. It was something that made me pay attention. The next morning, she told me everything. She did not ease into it. She did not build up to it, or choose her words carefully, or protect me from the hard parts. She sat across from me in the cargo bay on 2 empty supply crates, with the thermal blanket over her shoulders and the coffee I had brought getting cold between us, and she spoke for almost 2 hours without stopping. I listened. She was not the third princess. That had been the identity her security team created for her. A cover that made her easier to move, easier to deny. The true third princess had died 8 months before the attack on the courier ship, quietly, in the way that members of the ElseHFY royal house had been dying for the past 3 years. ElseHFY Coronvel was the last surviving heir of the direct ruling line. Her older sisters, her mother, her aunts, all gone, some by illness, some by accident, some by circumstances that the official records described one way and reality described another. She was the only one left with a direct blood claim to the matriarchal seat. That made her the most important ElseHFY alive. It also made her the most dangerous person to be. The noble houses, she said. The Council of Interior. There are 7 senior houses that have been waiting for the direct line to end. When the line ends, succession passes to the senior council, and they divide the ruling authority among themselves. No more singular matriarch. A governance by committee, which means a governance by whoever is willing to do the most to win the next vote. And whoever wins controls the alliance treaty with the coalition, I said. She looked at me. You already understood the political structure. I read the public record on ElseHFY governance when you told me what was happening, I said. I wanted to understand what we were in the middle of. When did you read it? The night after the boarding party. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the anti-human faction within the senior houses has been growing for 20 years. They believe humanity's expansion rate is a long-term threat to ElseHFY territorial interests. They have been using that fear to recruit allies inside the coalition, species who have their own concerns about how fast humans are moving through uncharted space. She paused. If the direct ruling line ends and the senior council takes authority, the first thing they will do is renegotiate the coalition ElseHFY treaty in ways that isolate humanity, economically at first, then politically, then, if they get what they want, territorially. And you being alive prevents that, I said. I being alive and in power prevents it, she said. Alive and in a coalition cargo vessel is just a problem they have not finished solving yet. I turned that over in my head. You said the route to your courier ship was known to 3 members of the inner court. Yes. Do you know which one? I know all 3, she said. I have known since before the ship was attacked. I identified the most likely candidates 4 months before we left, based on communications patterns and financial activity. I told my security chief. She looked at her hands. My security chief is one of the three. The cargo bay was quiet, except for the low hum of the coolant system behind us. Then why did you get on the ship? I asked. Because the alternative was staying on ElseHFY Prime and waiting for an approach that was less traceable, she said. Being attacked in transit at least gives me evidence. It establishes that the threat is real and documented and coordinated. A quiet death in a palace leaves nothing. She looked up at me. I needed to survive, and I needed proof. The ship's data recorder was built into the section of the hull with the highest structural integrity. It survived the attack. The rear cargo bay, I said. Yes. Where we found you. I moved there when the attack began, she said. I knew it was the most likely section to remain intact. I stared at her. She had been 14 minutes away from being picked up by a salvage crew in the one section of a destroyed ship that had the structural rating to survive, on purpose. You planned for us to find you, I said. I planned to survive, she said carefully. And I knew that if I survived, a salvage crew was a better first contact than any of the alternatives. Why? Because a salvage crew has no political obligation, she said. Because a salvage crew is not aligned with any faction. Because, and here she paused, and I saw something shift behind her eyes, something careful becoming something honest. I calculated that the odds of encountering at least one crew member who would respond to me as a person rather than a political problem were higher on a commercial vessel than on any coalition-affiliated ship. I sat with that for a moment. Did the calculation work out? I asked. She looked at me. The bioluminescent patterns along her neck pulsed once, slowly. Yes, she said. Better than I projected. There is something I still do not understand, I said. If the recorder survived, if you have evidence, why not just transmit it? Why do you need to be physically present at the outer council? She picked up the coffee container and looked at it without drinking. Because evidence can be contested, altered, or suppressed, she said. Testimony from the last heir of the direct ruling line, delivered in person, in front of the full outer council, cannot be. There are ceremonial laws so old that even the senior houses cannot override them. If I stand before the outer council and name the houses responsible and present the recorder data in that chamber, the record becomes permanent. Untouchable. She set the container down. But I have to get there first. Where is the outer council station? I asked. She told me. It was 4 days out from our current position, at moderate speed. 2 days, at the enduring Kel's maximum drive rating. And the coalition diplomatic vessel that is coming to collect you, I said. You think it is connected to the senior houses? I think it is very possible, she said. The coordination hub was slow to respond to your commander's initial report. That delay is consistent with someone redirecting the information before it reached the standard channels. Violet is not going to like this, I said. No, she said. He is going to want official authorization before he does anything. Yes. And getting official authorization through coalition channels might take long enough that the diplomatic vessel arrives first. Yes. I stood up from the supply crate and walked to the cargo bay wall and stood there for a moment, looking at the hull plating, thinking. The enduring Kel was a salvage vessel. We were not fast, we were not armed, and we were not authorized to go wherever we wanted without filing a route plan. Any deviation from our logged course would be registered by the Coalition Navigation Network within hours. But the outer council station was in ElseHFY sovereign space. Coalition navigation tracking went dark at the ElseHFY border. It was a point of territorial pride that the matriarchy had maintained since the original treaty. Their space, their rules, no outside monitoring. If we crossed into ElseHFY space, I said slowly, we would be off coalition tracking. The diplomatic vessel could not follow us without causing an incident. Yes, she said. And your outer council would give us safe passage out. Yes. And all of this requires me to convince Violeth to commit what is technically a route violation, cross into foreign sovereign territory without authorization, and deliver a royal heir to a political council in the middle of an internal governance crisis. Yes, she said. I turned back to face her. Can you convince him? She asked. I do not know, I said, but I know how to try. I picked up my empty coffee container. There is a thing humans do when we are worried about someone, I said. We argue about them. We get loud. We get stubborn. We keep pushing, even when the logic says stop. I have noticed, she said. You do all of those things. I am going to go do them now, I said, at Violeth. She almost smiled, for my sake. For the right outcome, I said, which happens to be good for you. That is how it usually works. I went to find the commander. The conversation lasted 40 minutes and covered, at different points, coalition salvage law, ElseHFY territorial law, the personal liability exposure of a commercial crew in a political situation, the documented history of the senior houses, the data recorder still locked inside the courier ship's cargo section, and finally, when all of that was done and I had run out of legal and logical arguments, I said, she is 18 years old and the only surviving member of her family, and 3 armed individuals with a kill order came to this ship to finish what someone started. You can do the calculation any way you want, Violeth. The answer comes out the same. Violeth looked at me with all 4 of his eyes for a very long time. Then he said, plot a course for ElseHFY outer boundary. Maximum drive. He walked away before I could say anything else. I stood in the bridge doorway and listened to the engine pitch rise as the enduring Kell accelerated. I went back to the cargo bay. ElseHFY was still on the supply crate, still holding the cold coffee. We are moving, I said. She heard the engine change too. She looked up. He agreed. He made the right call, I said. She was quiet for a moment. You are doing the thing again, she said, where you give the credit to someone else. He really did make the call. After 40 minutes, she said, I could hear the conversation. The walls on this ship are not very thick. I sat back down across from her. How much did you hear? Enough, she said. Jax. Why do you do that? Why do you never take the credit? I thought about it. Because in my experience, I said, people who spend a lot of time thinking about credit do not spend enough time thinking about what actually needs to happen. She looked at me for a long time. The deep green of her bioluminescent patterns was the steadiest I had ever seen it, warm and still, like something that had finally found the right temperature. You asked me on the first day, she said, why I trusted you, when you found me in the ship. I did not actually ask, I said. You told me. You would have asked eventually, she said. You ask everything eventually. She set the cold coffee down. The answer is not what you think. It was not because you were kind. I have met kind people who could not be trusted. It was not because you were calm. Calm is easy to fake. She paused. It was because when you told me the others were gone, you looked directly at my face. You did not look away. You did not rush past the moment. You let it be true, and you let me feel it, and you did not try to fix it or fill the silence. Her voice was very level. I knew then that you would not lie to me to make things easier. And that is the only thing I needed. The cargo bay was quiet. I was a medic, I said, after a moment. Medics learn early that the truth is the only thing that actually helps. Everything else is just delay. She nodded slowly. Yes, she said. That is it exactly. 2 days later, the enduring Kell crossed the ElseHFY border. The outer council station was not what I had imagined. I do not know what I expected. Something grand and formal, I suppose, given everything ElseHFY had told me about the ceremonial weight of what was about to happen. But the station from the outside looked like a working installation, functional and old, built in the curved ElseHFY architectural style that makes everything look slightly like the inside of a shell. No flags, no lights, just a structure turning slowly against a backdrop of deep space and 3 pale moons. She stood beside me at the forward viewport as we came in on approach. She had changed into a fresh set of clothes. Valeth had found a garment bag in the courier ship's cargo before we departed, still sealed, clearly packed for exactly this kind of emergency arrival. She was wearing pale gray and silver again, clean and formal, and she held her hands loosely at her sides, the way someone holds their hands when they have made peace with what is coming. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Prepared," she said. And then, a second later, afraid. "Both of those can be true at once," I said. "Yes," she said. "You told me that in the cargo bay, the first night." She remembered everything I had learned, every conversation, every word, stored and catalogued. It was not deliberate. It was simply how her mind worked, the same way the card game pattern recognition worked. She experienced the world and filed it, perfectly, and then she could reach back and retrieve any of it at any moment. "The Outer Council will want to question you," she said, still looking at the station. "I know," I said. "They will want to understand how you came to be involved. They will not be immediately comfortable with your role." "Aliens often are not immediately comfortable with me," I said. "I have a lot of practice." She almost smiled. "They will also want to know why I trust you. What will you tell them?" She was quiet for a moment. "The truth," she said, "that you found me in a burning ship and gave me a protein packet and asked if I was cold." And that somehow, that was exactly right. The docking approach was smooth and quiet. A council escort met us at the airlock, 4 ElseHFY officials in formal green and silver, their bioluminescent patterns dim and controlled, the neutral color of professional composure. They looked at ElseHFY with the particular attention of people who have been trained never to show surprise and were currently working very hard at that training. They looked at me with something less composed. "The human is crew," one of them asked. "The human is with me," ElseHFY said. Her voice had changed, not colder, but fuller, more present, the voice of someone who had been practicing being a private person and was now switching, deliberately and completely, into something else. "He will be present for all proceedings." The official opened his mouth. "All proceedings," she said again, not louder, just more certain. He closed his mouth. I walked beside her down the station corridor. It was wide and clean, lit in the warm amber gold of ElseHFY interior light, curved walls rising into a high arch overhead. Other council members stopped and stared as we passed. At her, first, the last heir of the direct ruling line walking alive and upright toward them, and then at me, a human, in crew clothes, at her shoulder. I heard someone say, in ElseHFY, a phrase I had learned 2 days earlier when she had been teaching me the basic formal vocabulary. It meant something close to, "What is happening?" I kept walking. The council chamber was round and tiered, each level of seating rising above the previous one so that everyone could see the floor at the center. That floor was where ElseHFY went. She walked to the exact center and stood there, in the amber light, and the chamber that had been murmuring went absolutely quiet. I stood at the edge of the floor, not beside her. This part was hers. I just held the position and watched. She spoke for 2 hours. I do not have the ElseHFY language well enough to have followed everything she said. I caught fragments, names I recognized from what she had told me, technical terms I looked up later, the word for evidence and the word for witness and the word for ending. She presented the recorder data, transferred from the courier ship before we left. She named the 3 members of the inner court. She named the senior noble houses by their full formal designations, each name landing in the chamber like something heavy dropped from a height. Halfway through, one of the council members from the upper tier said something sharp and loud that I did not understand. ElseHFY turned to face him. She said something back, short, clear, ending in a rising tone that was not a question. The council member sat down. She kept speaking. Near the end, she said a sentence that I caught completely, because she had taught me the words herself, in the cargo bay, during one of our late-night conversations when we had run out of card games and had simply started talking instead. She said, "The line did not end, it was protected. By someone who had no obligation to protect it, and no reason to do so, except that it was right." She turned her head and looked at me. Every member of the outer council followed her gaze. I did not look away. Old habit. You do not look away from things just because they are large. After the session ended, I was taken to a side chamber and questioned for 90 minutes by 3 council members, 2 of whom spoke excellent Galactic standard, and 1 of whom spoke through a translation device that added a slight delay to everything and gave the conversation a strange, echoing quality. They asked me how I found her. They asked me what decisions I made and why. They asked me what I expected in return. "Nothing," I said, when they asked about return. The council member with the translation device said something, and the device rendered it as, "That is not a complete answer." Everyone expects something. "Then I expect her to be safe," I said. "That is the thing I wanted when I found her. That is the thing I want now." They exchanged looks over my head. The questioning ended. They asked me to wait in the side chamber. I waited for 40 minutes, which gave me time to think about Valeth and the crew of the Enduring Kell, docked outside, technically in violation of their route plan, waiting on a ship that was now parked in the middle of a ElseHFY political crisis. I should probably have been more worried than I was. But I kept thinking about the look on ElseHFY's face when she walked into that chamber. The way her posture had changed from the girl in the thermal blanket to the person who was going to stand in the exact center of a room and make things true that needed to be true. I had not done that. She had done that. I had just cleared the corridor. The door opened. One of the council members, the one who spoke the best Galactic standard, a woman named Sarah Veth, with silver bioluminescent patterns that meant something in ElseHFY code I had not learned yet, came in and sat across from me. "The council has accepted the testimony and the recorder data," she said. "An emergency session will be called within 48 hours to address the situation within the senior houses. The legal structures are already in motion." "Good," I said. "The matriarchy will be seeking to extend an offer to your vessel, safe passage out, full route clearance, and a formal acknowledgement of service in the official record." She paused. "These are not small things in our system." "I understand," I said. "Tell Commander Valeth. He will appreciate the route clearance especially." She looked at me with the careful attention that I had come to recognize as the ElseHFY way of assessing whether someone meant what they said. "You are not interested in the formal acknowledgement." "I am interested in knowing that she is all right," I said. Sarah Veth was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "She asked to speak with you before you depart." She brought me to a smaller room, just 2 chairs, a low table, a wide viewport, looking out at the pale moons. ElseHFY was already there. She had kept the formal clothes, but her hands were in her lap, and her posture was the quieter version of herself, the cargo bay version, the real one. She looked up when I came in. "It is done," she said. "Yes," I said. I sat down across from her. "The council accepted everything," she said. "The houses have been named. The legal proceedings will be long and complicated, but the record is permanent now. It cannot be changed." "You did that," I said. She looked at me. "You made it possible." "You made it possible," I said. "You survived. You held the evidence. You planned for the right outcome when everything around you was on fire. I just stood in a corridor." She looked at her hands. "You said that is what humans do." "It is," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into the pocket of her formal garment and brought out something small, a flat oval of pale silver metal, etched with a design I could not quite read in the amber light, attached to a thin band of darker material. She held it out to me. "This is a sigil band," she said. "In ElseHFY tradition, it is given by someone of the royal line to someone who has entered their trust absolutely. She paused. It means that anywhere in ElseHFY space, anywhere the matriarchy has reached, you are under royal protection. If you are ever lost, you will be found. If you are ever in danger, there is an obligation to help you. It is not a small thing. I looked at the band in her extended hand. ElseHFY, I said, you do not owe me anything. I know that, she said. That is not why I am giving this to you. She held it a little further toward me. I am giving it to you because you are the first person I have met, outside my immediate family, who treated me as a person before anything else. Not a political asset, not a royal title, not a problem, a person. Her voice was steady and clear. That is rarer than any treaty, rarer than any alliance, and I want you to know that I know it. I took the band from her hand. It was lighter than I expected. The etching, up close, was extraordinarily detailed. Tiny, precise lines that formed shapes I would later learn were an old ElseHFY script, one of the oldest forms, the kind used only for things meant to last. Thank you, I said, for trusting me. Thank you, she said, for being worth it. We sat for a moment in that small room with the pale moons outside and the amber light and the quiet of something that had finally reached the place it was supposed to reach. Then she said, "There is one more thing." "Yes?" I said. "The Outer Council is going to be in contact with the Coalition Coordination Hub," she said. "They are going to make a formal statement about the events of the past 9 days. About how I survived, about what was done, and by whom, and why." She looked at me. "The statement will include a full account of the involvement of the human crew of the Enduring Kell, and specifically, the involvement of one crew member. Valeth is not going to love that," I said. "Valeth is going to receive a route clearance, a commercial recognition award, and an apology from 3 senior council members," she said. "He will love all of that." "And me?" I said. "The anti-human faction has spent 20 years building an argument that humanity is an unpredictable threat," she said. "An expansion force that acts without care for the species around it." She paused. "The Council's statement is going to note that the last heir of the ElseHFY direct ruling line was found by a human, and protected by a human, and brought safely home by a human. And that the human in question asked for nothing in return." She met my eyes. "That argument, the one they have been building for 20 years, is going to be very hard to maintain after that." I sat with that for a moment. "I was just doing the right thing," I said. "I know," she said. "That is the entire point." Outside the viewport, one of the pale moons was moving through its arc, slow and steady, the way moons move when nothing is trying to stop them. "What happens to you now?" I asked. "Now," she said, "the matriarchy has an heir, which means the transition that the senior houses have been working toward for 3 years has to stop. The legal proceedings will be public and very long, and I will probably not sleep enough for the next 2 years." She almost smiled. "But I will sleep in a room that is not a cargo hold, which is an improvement." "It had a good thermal blanket," I said. "It had a terrible thermal blanket," she said. "It was orange and made a noise when I moved." "That is called high-quality insulation," I said. She looked at me, and she smiled. Fully, really. The whole thing. The kind of smile I had only seen the edges of before. It was a remarkable thing. "Go home, Jax Mercer," she said. "Or wherever it is that someone like you goes." "I will figure it out," I said. I stood up. I put the sigil band on my wrist. It fit without adjustment, which I thought was either a remarkable coincidence or not a coincidence at all. I walked to the door. I stopped with my hand on the frame. "ElseHFY," I said. "Yes." "For what it is worth," I said. "You were worth it too. All of it." I did not look back. I walked down the corridor of the Outer Council station, past the amber lights and the curved walls, past the council members who watched me go with their careful ElseHFY eyes, out through the airlock and back into the docking tube and back onto the Enduring Kell. Valeth was waiting at the airlock. He looked at the band on my wrist. "Is that what I think it is?" he said. "A royal sigil band," I said. "Yes." All four of his eyes did something I had not seen before. "Mercer," he said, "in 31 years of operation, I have never had a crew member come back from a shore visit wearing a piece of royal jewelry." "This was not a shore visit," I said. "No," he said, "it was not." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Route clearance has been approved. We can leave as soon as you are ready." "I am ready," I said. The Enduring Kell disengaged from the outer council station. Through the forward viewport, as we pulled away, I could see the station turning slowly in the dark, and I thought about the girl I had found in a burning ship, with nothing but her wits and her courage, and the choice to survive long enough to matter. She had planned for a salvage crew to find her. She had calculated that the odds of meeting someone who would treat her like a person were higher on a commercial vessel than anywhere else. The math had worked out. I did not think of myself as the reason for that. I thought of myself as one human who had happened to be in the right corridor at the right moment and had been stubborn enough not to move. But the band on my wrist was real, and somewhere behind us, on a station turning against 3 pale moons, something had changed, quietly, without a battle, without a treaty signed in formal chambers by people in formal clothes. Changed because one person had been scared and alone, and one person had decided that was not acceptable and had done something about it. That is what humans do. That is always what we do.